We're looking for the leading momentum companies on the ASX, as well as the next market leaders, what we call the launchpad. We're going through the themes, looking whether it's healthcare, mining, iron ore, mining services, to understand where to focus our attention to identify the next best trading stocks. Gary Glover's been through the list. He gets it every Thursday afternoon. So we're recording one day early today. And we share that list with members on the same time. They put through their requests, and hopefully we go through the same companies and pick up any other ones that haven't been covered already to really look at where the best opportunities are and learn from what the market's telling us. He's been through the list and he's fresh and ready to tell us which companies we're looking at. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, good, Chris.
I say good morning, but it is actually afternoon. It is Thursday afternoon, and we're looking at this. So the charts will show us it's later in the day. We're going to have more volume than we normally see in the indicators in the bars. But you've been through the list. When you're looking at the quarterly momentum, so looking at the last 3 months and finding momentum within the ASX, what's standing out to you this week?
Well, I see a lot of stocks that were in the list last week are still on the list, Chris, this week. So, yeah, so there's a big portion of the 30 there that we look at there, and like even to the point where number one is still number one. So, is when I looked at this, I thought, oh, this looks familiar. So this is one we sort of covered last week. I think this had that big pop there. We were actually talking about it on this day here, which was, I think, the 28th, which was last Friday, because it had pulled back 3 days and it had no volume. So it had a really explosive move. So even though it's a small name, this is, so this is, we're wanting to sort of see things run, up easily or basically impulsively, and then pull back on this, in a corrective sideways manner, or at least pull back in a very light volume manner there. So you can see there we had no volume there, and obviously we've popped up here. So it's gone from 16 here to 40 cents there just in a matter of days there. So it's a beauty when you see that really impulsive move, really strong move, and had a little pause on, and we know when we go through the model book, when we see those strongest names pull back on very light volume, they're often the ones that sort of continue there. So yeah, probably got to keep an eye on this one here. Look, it's had a big jump here now. It had a big jump there last week to even bigger now. Today is probably the first day of selling here, but we know sometimes we only get sort of, we might get selling the first day, but then you got to watch the sort of next couple of days there. So, yeah, you'll probably be watching this one and just sort of see what happens from there. Number 2 on the list we spoke about last week as well. Paradise. I know there's a few traders were looking at this, had a bit of a nice move here. You and I mentioned that this was a massive contender for a cap raise. So no surprise to see that going into a trading alt today. If you read the second page, via a cap raise coming. So, yeah. So look, still had a good pop there, nice move there, but been one that's right. It's been some of the price action, being sort of strange. It's had a few runs up in the cap raises before, so yeah, it's got a lot of overhead now, so it's been trending down for quite a while. So anytime it rallies into sort of some heat there, it's going to be met with sort of some selling here. So I know it looks pretty chunky there. Maybe there's sort of something going on there, but as you and I were referring to last week, those trials there can take a long time. So even though they got to the FDA, got past the first vetting process there, those trials are going to take a while. So it's going to take some time there to potentially still get to commercial status there. So that's I know some of the new traders won't understand that, but that knowledge is will be acquired over time there. But yeah, that's the risk of biotech. So you just got to be watching sort of how much money they're holding as well, because they're often sort of looking to sort of try and raise money. So anytime they see a really big sharp move there, I'd be watching to sort of see how much cash they've got. So it's always nice to see them do a cap raising, then the price sort of settle for a month or two, and then it starts to go for a run. Because then yeah. But saying that, I've I've bought a few of them in the past. I think actually IMR, which was actually on the list here, had that run there out of here, which was, I think on the weekly, I was looking at this as a bit of a VCP. The whole thing is sort of tightened up here. So I thought, oh, this looks like it might be able to get going here. But it did have a good little run there. And then, if I'm not mistaken there, it raised around here, Chris, as well. So I think there was, so yeah, maybe I might have been some news around here, then maybe it raised in here and stuff there. So, but yeah, it did cause a bit of weakness there. So when they do raise capital there, you get a bit of weakness there. So, yeah, I think this one here, I got lucky. I was able to sort of get out and then maybe come back in here. But yeah, it took a little while to get going. Unfortunately for me, this has looked pretty robust there. What it did do was it did do a VCP in there, which we spoke about previously. Went up here, did like 3 or 4 days, not much volume there. Little, sitting on top of the high there. That's gone to a new high again. A little bit of an overlap here. So it looked a little negative there, but what you didn't see was any selling as well. And then we've had a pretty good move here. So looking a little stretched here, but we know that these sort of stocks can keep going here. The trend structure is actually left spacing between the last high and low, so still losing in a pretty strong position there. Haven't seen any really selling here so far, so yeah, just be nice to sort of see this one have a bit of a pause, some congestion there, maybe give us another opportunity to get back in, because that weekly structure does look pretty good. That's come out of a nice base there, a few high lows in there, nice cup and handle. So yeah, it looks pretty good structure there longer term. Just be nice to sort of see some sort of pause of tightening up there and give us another look there. What else we got there? EUR was number 4 on the list. Just not too much there to sort of look at there. Just it has had an impulsive move here. It's gone through a few highs there now, so it just kind of goes on the watch list just because it has gone up fast. It's too small for me personally. I don't trade the small ones, but if I was a momentum trader there, I would put up my list there just to sort of one to watch. PLL, which has been on the list the last couple of weeks, had that really strong move there, some big volume on that tape, and then it did have a bit of a pause there. What you did see, I think we did see a couple of, did see 2 days of selling there, so that was probably a bit of a concern there. Had a bit of a bounce on light volume, which is not what you want to see, and then it did fade there, but the volume did dry up here. So normally we'd see a longer period of pause there, but we've seen a few of these actually do the little high type flag here, and then come out and go to a new high. There's been a few of them actually lately, which sort of hasn't been the case for a while. So we are seeing some sort of strength in some of these smaller names at the moment. It's definitely some of these smaller caps actually are performing pretty well. So yes, there's some good volume in the last few days as well. So it still looks pretty robust there. So yeah, so I mean, it looks potentially a little bit stretched here, but there's no weakness there yet. So it still looks pretty constructive to me. Talked about IMR. What else we got there? The PME, geez, I mean, that's I thought that looked cooked last week. I thought that sort of move there when you saw that, I think it was what was the range there? It was 230 to 258, so $28, $29 range in a single day. But wow, that's I think where the average range is about $3. So that can often end a move here. But again, this is unbelievably sort of strong market there, and those momentum leaders are just. It's amazing. It's some of the stocks that are actually, I'm seeing some sort of stocks, Chris, at the moment, which represent some pretty good value. Like there's some stocks that have been beaten up that are sitting on pretty single digit or low PEs. Some yields are around, 7, 9, 11%. They just can't catch a break. They're just sort of they're just kind of flatlined. They're almost, but yeah. They're almost sort of just operating on a pulse there. They just can't get going here. Whereas the stocks that are on PEs of 150 and 250 or, and have been flying and momentum, they just don't let up. They've just, I can't remember sort of seeing a momentum market like this. That just kicked on. So the strongest names are just powered. Just haven't really given up too much here. So this PME, I think it's the P is around about 280. No, I guess it's a fair. That's a fair whack. Don't get me wrong. The company's that obviously got some great results here, but I'm still nervous about the stock here when it gives up here. But yeah, look at that volume. It's still
It's huge. The last 3 days have been stellar volume.
yeah. So even that little pause there, look, it's like I thought that was exhaustive, and then you had 1 or 2 days there. Didn't see the selling coming. Like, normally you see a move like that, you would have started to see some selling there. So this is why, that's why you backstop, sort of just, because you don't know how far these things can go. So you sell, you might have sold, I think I mentioned last week, David Ryan might have sold, a quarter or an eighth. So just sell some into that type of monster move. But he'll just backstop the rest. He'll hold some through there. So, yeah. So, I mean, that, with the 10 days, it's a fair way back here, but this is, the good thing is that it's the 10 days going up just as fast as the stock is. So it's going to trail, it's going to catch up. If it has a few, you hope that at some stage it will have a bit of a pause, and then before it rolls off, and then the 10 will get closer there. It's like, I know sometimes as traders that we see these things get a bit vertical and get nervous because the stop's so far away with that moving average there, but it can, a couple of days it will catch up pretty quickly. So I know a few times there I've sort of been traded a few adminters. I've sold some into heat, might have sold maybe a quarter or half, and then I'm tracking it there and I'm like, geez, it seems like a long way away from where the price is and where my stop is. But it comes all the way back down there, because in your head you're like, oh, I'm going to give up a lot of my gains, but it does tend to sort of catch up. It's pretty rare for it just to let go and cut that 10 really deep. It normally sort of will congest for a few days, and the 10 will sort of catch up there a little bit. BVS was sort of one that had an episodic pivot during the week, so had a update there, a good so I think I think the result was pretty strong there. Might have been an upgrade to dividend as well, from memory. But it's capped up pretty strong and kept running here. So we talk about that sort of game changer EP trade. One of the things I've learnt this year is to, if you do get that sort of gap up nice and strong, I think it might have been up around 6 or 7%, for instance. I think it was sort of 165, open up around 180. So what's 15 cents on 165? So around about 7 or 8% gap up. So that sounds like a lot, but that's right on the money.
It's not too much. It's the Goldilocks.
There. Yeah. So around that sort of 7% is around that sweet spot for the episodic pivots as well. So if they do sort of gap up in that sort of 6 to 8, window,
He talks about like a 1% trail from the open. That looks like it's kind of close. It's like it held.
Yeah, that's right. So 1%. So where did it open at 180? So
2.5 cents.
Yeah, so you might have, it's a tight one there. So but probably adjusting the scope there. But you probably give yourself a little bit of room. I'm not sure you give yourself just 2 cents to it, but you might, yeah. But it's look, it's I know, as I feel these trades have been working quite nicely there. So I've been sort of finding those high in the range, like the false break, but staying in the top half, the undercut, they've been working pretty well. And then in the last couple of weeks, we noticed episodic pivots, and like a lot of us, or even some smaller names as well, that have gapped up there. So it's been some okay trades in there. I think GTK might have been an episodic pivot risk there last week, which is still that, that's gapped up and run as well. So again, what was that? Sort of closed at 9.40, opened at 10.23. So what's 80 cents on 9 there? So it's probably around that 7 or 8% gap up. So again, right on that magic, around that sort of 6 to 8 is the sort of the magic number there. It's gapped up and up. So it hasn't actually, all this is done here, it's had that, 1, 2, 3, 4 days of strength. So that's sort of one of the, I think, one of the rules around that is to sort of sell some into, day 4, day 5 into that. If you get a strong move into that.
Hey, got a coil under the high.
But now you know, well, this is not, and look at the volume. So we've had massive volume here on the rally, and this is just coiling nice and tight. It's not, So again, you see, this market is just showing strength with momentum names. They're just going up. They're having these tight calls there and money. So that's not giving up anything. So still pretty strong. So I saw Mesoblast actually did let go here today. So it's had a pretty good run there. I did trade this one out of the little B wave there. Sold into heat there, and then I think I backstopped the rest there, which just sort of cut me out. So yeah, it ended up bouncing off the 20, came back a bit further, and then went to a new high there. Look, interesting here at the high there, it sort of stopped under the high, had a little 1 day, maybe a little second day. I would have liked this to been just more of a sideways under the high there. Maybe that too. David Ryan likes to sort of see that that little 3-day pause, which if you actually think about the NASDAQ, maybe not NASDAQ, might be the Dow Jones here actually. Just in the last few days, it's sort of sorry, while I'm just tasting it, might have been S&P there. So just see how it's nice and it's gone up to the high there. It's gone 1, 2, 3 days on its side here. That's that really tight sideways under the high there. So that's when you sort of see that, it just like normally you'll see it here as well. Just you'll see lots of them go up here, run up, go to a new high here, goes tight sideways there. When you sort of see that, under the highs there, sort of just tightening up there, they generally sort of break out in favor of the trend there. So Mesoblast looked like it was going to do that, but it didn't sort of set up. It ended up popping out to a new high, and then kind of ran out of business. So I think yesterday was a little bit of a false break on the high. So would have, if you saw something like that, I would, I know sort of sometimes these momentum stocks can just go to a new high and can give you like a little bit of a false break and then edge back a bit and then keep going. But you still got to sort of, if you don't get rock solid signals there, and you see a little, you can see that obviously momentum, the volume was sort of lighting off there. But that day there would have had you tightening up a little bit. I would have definitely at that stage there, I would have liked to have seen a tight move there. I wouldn't want to see it come off here. So personally, I would have tightened up to the 10 or something if I had stayed in there, but I didn't actually. That sort of stopped out here when it came back here. So MSB, what have we else we got there? There was a bull flag there on MNB. I thought was interesting there. It's sort of, they've had a bit of an impulsive rally there. There's some okay volume through here. And it sort of pulled back there. It got a bit messy there, but it still stayed nice and tight in here. We probably would have liked to have seen the volume maybe lighten up a bit more, but it still stayed pretty good there. And then it's popped out there. I guess what you're looking for is that move there. So what, 4 to 7, so 3 cents or something there. That's probably, where you're sort of projecting that, so that's something 5 to 8 or something like that. So you're looking for that sort of same type of sort of move there. So still got okay volume here. That's actually pretty good volume there. And good volume on the other days as well. So it's still looking pretty robust actually. So not showing too much weakness. IPX, which has been on the board a few times this year, Chris, as well. Interesting sort of stock here. Again, like another sort of leader there, it's just continue to keep going up here. Like talking about this, look at that stock in there. So, looks very extended there. It's getting away from the 10. And 1, 2, 3 days in here, you just see the selling doesn't come in here. So when you sort of see that high tight sort of congestion under the high there, it doesn't sell off there, you're invariably going to pop through. So sometimes they might only have a little pop and then they might give up after that. But when you see these extensions like this, staying nice and tight here, no volume comes in, you just know they're going to go to a new high first. So, Yeah, so you don't know how far these are going to how far they're going to keep going. But look, this is showing great strength there. It's just kept sitting on top of the high all the time here. So even in here, like this is less spacing here now, Chris, as well. So between that pullback and the high and the spacing there, so when you see that, that's when you sort of get confident you're going to actually go to a new high as well. So pretty robust overall, pretty strong market there. I think the last one there might have been SHG. Again, a bit of a impulsive move, a bit corrective here. The whole thing's done a bit of a VCP in here, and it started to break out some good volume coming in here. I think it's sort of like might have rolled at another company into this one here, sort of just raised some money. I think it's in that medical space there, which I think you highlighted. There's a lot of those names. A lot of great healthcare names in the list there. Yeah. I mean, that's had not a bad volume there, push out of this range. Then stayed pretty tight now. Look at the chunky volume here as well. So this is sort of one to keep an eye on there. It's a bit early stage from what I read there. Did recognize one of the directors on there. But yeah, too small for me, but I definitely one to keep an eye on there. So it looks pretty interesting.
And there were still a few requests. You covered a lot of them, but looking back through the list, there's Metal Hawk, Mike Hotel Kilo. That was further up the list in sixth place. Mike Hotel Kilo MHK. So Metal Hawk, which we have seen before, working in that defense space, and has had that pop. So it's really, look, how do you interpret that congestion in there? It's broken out. It looks like the second one. So we had this one in August and then another one in September. I know statistically from studying these, when you have breakouts and rallies of 75 to 100%, you very rarely get the third one to kick on the same flagpole again. But how do you interpret the volume and what's happening with that one?
Yeah, I think actually, I mean, this is actually not a bad sort of stock here, even though it's a little bit loose and erratic there. You do have some pretty chunky volume in there. That's why you just look at some of those. That name we just looked at there, it could be pretty early because it's sort of, even though it's sort of sporadic and had a couple of runs there, it can go through another pause again and tighten up. So you saw that VCP and here, the whole thing tightened up and break out. And then it's had another pretty good run, and there was good volume all the way through there. You did see a couple of days selling there, so you thought it might have been over there. Then it sort of bounced up on good volume again, and then the volume's dried up. So it's really got into that VCP again. So, when you see it dry up again nice and high there, you can sort of come out here. So it still looks pretty good there. Might be looking a little extended there, as you point out there. It's had a few runs here now. But yeah, just a matter of sort of watching the volume now selling there. I think I saw something like, might be BRN. It's got a bit of a VCP going on as well, Chris, but that's sort of, I've got to be careful this one here. I think, there's a lot of
headwind ahead.
Yeah, the overhead, and also, it's been one of those stocks that, it's made very little money and had a massive market cap. So it's been promised so much and delivered almost nothing. So, so it's just one to be very careful of, but it is sitting on a VCP here. But I think that's why it's nicer to sort of see some of those newer names there, because there's not, you don't have the overhead there, above there, so they sort of can keep going there. OCC as well. I think actually I did notice actually that those stocks have both had VCPs as well, Chris. So that was a great little VCP in there. Whole thing tightened up and then kicked on. So, as I say, sometimes lately we're seeing these moves have that, maybe that, rally, then pause and rally again. And then you're seeing a longer pause there. But in some of these smaller names there, we're seeing these pauses only last a month or two and then keep going. So, whereas like previous to that, we were seeing them maybe go 2 to 5 months. And so, so can't rule out some of them actually breaking early here. So that, that was a good little VCP there. There's your little, even if you wait for your B wave break here at 70 cents there, it's 70 cents to 110. It's not bad. So,
yeah. Well, while you're up that part of the list, another one in third place was MTM, Mike Tango Mike, metals, European metals. But that chart. Sort of similar thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, I thought it comes out actually, but I must have missed it though. Yeah, it's again, I had a VC plan there, Chris, as well. So it's been a bit of a leader in there. Had a bit of a pullback in there. There was a bit of selling in here. But then the next sort of leg down here, we did sort of drop there. The thing I liked is you sort of got that ABC here. So it looks like a three-way correction, but then it does give you a little bit of a B-wave. It just kind of gaps through it. But to me, I like to see them tighten up here, and then break that level there. So, I mean, even if you sort of waited there, when it's too small for me personally, but that, even opening at 8 cents or 9 cents and that potentially might have been something I'd look at there. If it was a bigger share price, I'd say one of my rules now is just to trade above 50 cents. So,
We're in the same boat there. The lower percentages just
yeah,
probably my averages. So
yeah. Look, if it's around 47, 48 cents, I might move a little bit there. There's one at the moment actually around that 49 and a half that I'm looking at pretty close. I'm waiting for a little bit of strength. So, by the time I probably get to it, it should be 50 cents. So, yeah. But
another,
yeah.
it's right on the threshold, obviously. Another one in the list that was requested was PointsBet PBH, which we've had requested before. So clearly someone's trading that and wanting to pick.
Yeah, it's had a good run. Like a few good brokers have been talking this up. They've called it. It's been a few guys that I follow that talk about this one. So it's been pretty robust there. I think it's got something worth potentially taking over there. Just it's had a pretty good run there. Like if it's feels like it's at the point now where everyone's pricing a takeover. So if it doesn't come, you got some risks there. So, but look, it's still. I mean, it's hugged the 10 here so far. So, I think looking at how strong that's been here for the last, 15, 20 days there, stayed above the 10-day moving average. So you just wouldn't want to see it close below the 10 there. So I think TEA, it's, pushed on and it, threatened to break the 10 end up, sort of kind of went a bit higher there. But it has broken the 10 here now. So to me, even though it's broken the 10 quite a bit and then come back here, but it looks like it might be in consolidation mode here. So far PBH is still holding there. No aggressive selling in so far. But yeah, you just got to be, as momentum goes, you don't want to sort of see those moving averages get crossed there.
That's right. Those moving averages are paramount, and we've got a great chart in the Launchpad, which we'll look at. Been requested as well, but I think you'd have it earmarked anyway. When we move over to the Launchpad, obviously what we want to look at and understand is the leading thematics that you talked about before. And many times you've said, look, I saw a lot of gold stocks, a lot of uranium, lithium, whatever, and then weeks later it popped and broke out. And we know a lot of the members have asked questions about sort of leading themes and what's happening. So
I suggested today that it's something, rather than ask me about it, you're looking at this in greater detail, you should be telling us about it. So
well, I'll do that. And I didn't want to be stealing the thunder because Gary goes through all the charts and he's actually pulling out and knowing from his knowledge, whereas I've got the database that spits out the report for me. So while I do share it, Gary's doing the fine tooth combing. Now, for the momentum, if we break them into the two, we've got the momentum list and the Launchpad list. You had mentioned sort of healthcare's in there, and we'll get to that in a second. The momentum list, we've got 50 out of the top 200 companies on the momentum are in software, 65 are in financials, and 61 are in IT. Obviously, a huge overlap of IT and software, but that tells us that's a pretty solid theme. When we get about a quarter of the list being one segment, that's pretty solid. Drilling down to the next layers, IT and cloud did rank number 1 and 3, and they have 15 and 19 constituents respectively in the top 200. What we like to see, if we've got a top 10 theme, we like to see between 7 and 10 is normally pretty healthy. More than 10 is nice and healthy. So we've got a lot of solid themes there, very IT based. Where we want to know where the next leaders are coming from, that's what the list Gary will go through in a second, where we've also got a fair few requests from. And this is what Gary was talking about in the healthcare. If we look at the top 200 Launchpad companies on the ASX, 61 of them are in the healthcare space. 57 of them are Western Australian miners with tenements in Western Australia. Helps when you have a decent takeover like we have had this week. But 33 are mining services. So that's telling us there's a good concentration there. Normally we don't have this many numbers within the top 200. And you'll note there was a request for Fortescue this week. Iron ore's ranked number 2, but defense that we were talking about before with Metal Hawk in the momentum, they're ranked number 1. So there's overarching, there's also oncology and cancer with biotechnology and drugs. They're ranked 5 and 6 on the launch pad. So they're the themes that are really moving this week. But when we drill down to the charts, I'll hand the microphone back to Gary and say, well, what popped out to you in the launch pad this week?
Yeah, it's funny talking about sort of the healthcare sector because I was reading someone on the weekend there who was talking about who overlaid what happened with Trump, but I was sort of like 4 years ago, and obviously the financials were the sector that moved first. I think software was a bit of a slight laggard, and then it really took off later, and then healthcare was slightly laggard again, but then took off later as well. So sort of like financials went first, software went second, and then healthcare went third. And so you're saying financials has obviously been they're in the list, their momentum for been there for a while now, so they've already led there. What his guidance was, and what he was sort of suggesting was that once he was overlaying the sectors there. He's saying that it looked like there was a little bit more upside in financials, but he was inferring that pretty much 90% of the race had been run. They're probably just going to flatline or consolidate. That the software that's had a nice pop, that's likely to run a bit further. And the healthcare in the laggard would also bounce and have a lot further as well. So he was actually, his suggestion was that based on what happened in 16, that probably should be start taking money off out of financials and putting it into software and healthcare. So interesting. So that's what you're sort of showing here is was sort of what this analyst was suggesting there based on what happened last time coronavirus. So although history doesn't always repeat, but yeah.
It echoes and rhymes a lot, as the saying.
Yeah. So but looking through the list there, so MTM was sort of one that we did mention this one there, but look, it's pretty strong volume there, some pretty chunky volume. So it probably just goes on the watch list for me. 40X we did mention there last week. That's that's had that impulsive move and then come off here. The only thing that bothers me here is it's still in a downtrend there, Chris. Still, I don't like them using up this much time as well. Just sometimes that, if they just had a nice impulsive move. Look, the PCP here should have got going, but it never really cracked on here. Just kept making lower highs there. So it has had has made a B-wave break here yesterday, which is maybe that's a good sign. The volume's a bit light here today, but it's just not ideal. Just because the trend's still down here, like still haven't broken some high here. And this correction was so long here, but look, it's okay. It's not the worst sort of setup, but yeah, maybe it can get going here, but yeah, just not perfect there for me. M4M, yeah, this is coming off a low again. We've had pretty strong downtrend for a while. We do have some chunky volume there, so to me, it just goes in the watch list just to sort of keep an eye because we've had a bit of an impulsive move. Maybe it can consolidate, but still hasn't broken a high yet. Still in a strong downtrend. Might just be a bit of a counter move here in the trend. So it's just sort of one to watch there. There you are. Get another small name. Now this one's a bit more effective there because it has broken above the previous swing highs. Actually broken above probably 2 or 3 previous swing highs there. So again, it's a bit small for me personally, but has had a really good move, really impulsive. So it's pretty aggressive rally and some pretty good volume there. So I probably prefer that over the last one there just because it's moved out of the trend there. RTR, I think this is Not sure this one. It sort of looks still a bit flat here. Hasn't really, although it's sitting above the 50, the volume's okay. It's it's looking more sideways orientated. I'd really like to sort of see that. At the moment, I much favor to sort of see that sort of stronger move and then the tighter pause and then coming into it. And then, yeah, it seems counterintuitive to be buying up so high. But when we're, this market here, we're sort of seeing those stronger names. So when they're having those higher pauses there, just keep continuing to run here. It's the weaker names that pull back deep in the range. They're the ones that are struggling to get going here. So this one's just come back a bit too far from there. So just not ideal there. RMC, just kind of goes on the radar for me, just because it's had a pretty nice, we've got a bit of a low in place here, had a bit of a rally, gone sideways, but now we have broken a little B wave in here, but we have had some pretty good volume there. So probably just going to look at this one here longer term. Let's see there. So look, still a bit of a strong downtrend overall. Get some okay volume in there, but yeah, it probably, for me, just probably goes on the watch list there to sort of have a look at there, see if it can't sort of do some building here, but just might be late stage there. ANG I thought was pretty interesting, Chris. This is this is a strong sector. We know the sector's sort of strong. Very strong company actually. The metrics on ANG are pretty good as well. So this is like I think in Stock Doctor, and anyone does the sort of fundamental analysis will see that this has got a pretty strong background there. I think WAM leaders, it's like there. I think they're this is one of their sort of strong stocks as well. So for notice this one here, it sort of had a bit of a pullback, bit of a pause there. Has had a nice bounce, then pull back and a nice bounce again. So okay volume and then pull back in here. So and then the whole thing bounced again and consolidated. So we've now got in here, Chris, we had a bit of a VCP. So this is one that I thought looked pretty good there. It really is, so if it breaks above 55 cents there, that's breaking above the little B wave in there. And the whole thing's a VCP tightened up and see pretty light volume there as well. So I had a few good volume days up as well. So I thought pretty healthy looking chart, strong sector. All the sister companies are all looking pretty robust. This is the sort of thing that you should be looking at.
What about the moving averages? They're all sort of following up tight.
Yeah, that's right. So it's sitting above the 50 now. So it's got itself back above the 50. They're all sort of flattened out. So I know you and I like to sort of see them all tighten up as well. So this looked pretty good setup here. What's happened here is, I actually didn't end up taking the trade only because I was already fully invested. So I had no room. But it did break the B wave there a couple of days ago, and then since then it's actually come off. It hasn't failed here so far, but it's so far it's not working and didn't show that strength and really get going here. So so look, it just goes to show, and sometimes you can get the perfect sort of setup here, all the everything's lined up there, all the things you're looking for, and it may not work here. So look, so at this stage it hasn't failed yet, but it just hasn't sort of shown that awesome sort of strength there. So look, it might turn around here and keep going, but yeah, just interesting now that you're probably on paper there, you've got probably 7 out of 8 sort of boxes ticked for what you're looking for, and it hasn't worked there. And that's the reality. I think it's worth sort of highlighting that sometimes we're oftentimes showing the ones that work here. It's worth showing the ones that maybe don't work as well, or might have a few little throwbacks. So yeah.
Doesn't mean it can't work, but it's just you're noting that while it's perfect setup, it's not doing exactly what you want it to do. It's not completely down and out for count, but it's not the right.
Yeah, lots of the ones that have had that sort of setup here have just powered on and just kept going and haven't looked back. So so it's still worth watching here, just because it has been a bit of a strong stock there, and the sector's pretty strong as well. CIA, I thought, this has sort of come back too far for us as well. Had that strong rally, which was a good sign of strength there, but then the pullbacks come back, really deep in the range there. So just, you prefer to sort of see them stay, higher inside of there. So I think, the other one on that list there was fortescue there. See how that was a bit more impulsive and it stayed a little bit higher in the range. So just shows a bit more strength there. So that's what I mean. Sometimes you really want it to if you have that impulsive rally there, there's a sort of something up been shifting towards there. I want to see it stay in the top half. Because that's a sign of strength there. I know McLaren used to say, sometimes the stronger stocks will only come back a quarter of the range. They can come back at a third of the range, but if they come back more than 50% of the range, then they're probably not showing that sort of strength. So I think that's actually, to be honest, I think it's a good rule for momentum traders there, is that you don't want to see deep pullbacks and you want to see them stay in the top half of the range here. So, I think once they close below the bottom half of the range, I think you probably don't want to be looking at them personally. So, what else we got there? SVR was actually one that I was watching there, that Solver, just because it had, it's had a pretty strong year here, has gone up to the high as well. So really, it's gone back to retest the high there, and then it's done this sort of handle here under the old high, Chris. So we've got a perfect cup and handle set up there. We did a little A, B, C in here. And there wasn't a lot of selling analysis. I did look this company up there. For some reason I didn't get excited about what I was reading there. But I did like the setup here. Again, I just was kind of fully invested there, but I thought this one looked pretty solid overall. But it's pulled back here, still stayed pretty tight. Eventually it ends up cracking through here. So this day here was the 29th of there, was it finally sort of breaks above there. So again, it's had a pretty nice move since then. So pretty solid setup. I think COS is another one there. This was another episodic pivot, Chris, as well. There was some news out there yesterday on this one. So it did sort of open up strong. I think maybe a little bit less than what do we closed at? 96, opened at 98 there, so 2 cents. It's really only up about 2% there, so not the strongest episodic pivot there, but did gap up and run there. So a little bit light. This one there wasn't a lot of stock around. So now for me, if I was going to play that one, I would have been playing it pretty small. The MTH, which I think we've covered there. That's on the
That was on the requested list as well, MTH.
Okay. That's actually for some reason I mean, there's a big VCP there, Chris. Pulled back, probably staying in the top half so far. Is that the right stock? MTH? Yeah, because it's not really showing too much strength here the last few days. But yeah, a good chart anyway. So and that sector's obviously been pretty robust as well. I think actually the golds actually have all showing a bit of strength today. Here's a few of them have actually popped up here. So, but yeah, that's not a bad little setup there. That's had the ABC. It's actually gone back for another retest there. The volume's dried up here, so this should definitely be on our radar just because it's gone from 10 to 80 cents. It's gone up 8 times. So it's definitely in my 100 club watch list. So you just want to sort of keep an eye on that. But you want to sort of see some signs of strength there. You want to see a little B wave get broken there before you look at them, because sometimes they can, even though some of them might have been lasting about a month or 6 weeks here lately, go back a few months, they were, most of them are stretching out to around about, sort of 3 to 5 months, or some even out to 7 as well. So, but yeah, definitely one to be keeping an eye on that. MNB, we talked about that one already. I think IDX, which has been on the list already for a while. It's been pretty strong there. Had a nice little cup and handle, which ended up sort of not kicking on again, but did set up again, and then the next cup and handle really worked really nicely. The thing with this trend here is that it's actually pulled back here again, just at ABC, but the whole thing is just sat on top of the whole tires. It's actually left a bit of spacing there. So in terms of actually where the trend sits, it sits in a pretty strong position. So when you don't come back and, leave space between the old high and the low there, that usually means it can go to a new high. So still looks pretty robust there. Technically they're probably bigger level, maybe up towards 350 there. So maybe this can get up towards that old level there. But yeah, still looks pretty robust overall. Last one on the list there was, it's not actually, I've watched this one for a while, actually, the PPE. Just sort of starting to build a bit there. Look, it's had a pretty strong downtrend for a while here. So it's sort of one of those companies that sort of seems to be sort of, pretty nasty sort of downtrend there, but it sort of went through a bit of a tough period there, but just, possible maybe turn the corner here. So I just wanted to sort of keep an eye on that. It's got a few losers there, but sometimes those newer names there can go through a bit of a rough period for a couple of years and come back here. So, I normally don't like to sort of see that many losers there, but hasn't been around that long. So it's not, it did have a pretty, good run early, and then it sort of tempered off here. So we know that sometimes they can recover these newer names that have only been around for a few years. So, but yeah, just wanted to watch there. That's all.
While you're at rank number 30 on the Launchpad, just above that, one of the requests was 29th, DXB, Dimerix. How's that?
Yeah. Still, I mean, look, it's had that impulsive rally in the middle of the year, and it has sort of stayed high and tight there. So that's okay there. But you sort of had, ABC, and now we've got we've got D and E and F sort of, we're sort of getting a bit long, and so we've sort of got a nice downtrend developing here. So it's not really showing that sort of signs of strength that you want to see. I mean, the strongest names will just have that ABC. Maybe they undercut again and they build from there. They don't sort of keep going down here. So, the volumes are a little light in here. So that's probably some sort of constructive signs there. But yeah, feels like this one's going to need to build here first before it does anything too much there. And even that, I know it's a bit oversold here, but so far, this is not impulsive rally. It's still doing it tough to get going here. So, it wouldn't even make my watch list personally. So yeah,
right. Well, there are three others that are minors from the Launchpad, and going back to, let's see, rank number 17th, MAU, Magnetic Resources. How's MAU look from your front?
Yeah, it's sort of one of those stocks that had a great run there previously, but now it's sort of like tipped over. So it's it's like an overbalance of the trend there to me. So it's sort of, after having a great run, it's now sort of tipped over. Look, you could argue it's maybe come back and set on top of the previous high, find some support there. There just was some reasonable amount of selling through here. A bit so look. Just don't like the size of that correction now. Let's come back to the 50 there, but just don't love it.
Another one.
Even though that rally there, Chris, as well, pretty light. I know it's light pullback there, but light, and then today's the first day we've seen any volume there. That's probably after a little bit of a three-wave rally, and then so it might just be might be attracting some selling here. That's all. So I'll be pretty cautious with that one.
So not bolstered with a lot of volume on the rallies, which you would like to see after that kind of overbalance of the trend.
Yeah. We don't want to see sort of like a light rally and all of a sudden it gets up there, all of a sudden the volume comes in. That's, you'd like to sort of see that volume be, it's like the stronger names that we're seeing that, 2 or 3 days of strong volume and then dry up all that, if it runs up and then you see the volume pop, that's always a bit of a concern there, because then that's potentially a distribution sign today for that stock.
Well, another one on the list is ranked number 7th, SS1, Sun Silver, SS1.
Yeah, this is interesting there, because it sort of has been a leading name. Did have a little bit of a B-wave break in here during the week, so did break. I just don't like it. If this had sat on top of the previous high here, I would have liked it a bit more. But it has sort of undercut there. It's just that's a bit deep. a bit impulsive there. We'd love to send that be a bit more corrective there. So yeah, it's when it did break the 50, it's when it did break above the B wave, it was under the 50 as well. I'd personally I found I had much greater success when, if they're breaking the D wave and they're above the 50, then if they're down. So, yeah, and even better still if the pullback sits on top of the 50, the whole thing as well. So not only, being above the 50 when it breaks the B wave, but the pullback holding above the 50 as well is a stronger sign. So I think I must be getting maturing, getting older now, because I'm sort of getting choosier and choosier. So I just really, feel like I'm sounds funny though. I'm sort of taking less trades here lately, and just trying to be, might be missing out on sort of stuff. I feel like I'm potentially missing out, but I just can't get FOMO there because sort of it's such a this it's a weird market there. You sort of the stuff that's running just keeps it's barely having a breather and keep going there. And other opportunities that sort of setting up are sort of not really sort of it seems to be the usual names that sort of keep moving there. So yeah, I've probably 3 of my trades I've been in for maybe a month or 2.
Which is long for a momentum trader. When
yeah. So just sort of staying with that. They just keep sort of So yeah, you're almost better off waiting rather than because I was often in the past here trying to get in early, but it's almost safer to be waiting.
buy runs.
Right. So well, it's almost sort of you almost sort of let them sort of show their hand, show the strength, and then sort of coming in there. So I mean,
I think Calford from an insight you shared about Minervini, where he says the market bottomed. It might be weeks or a month where he's not actually really heavily invested, but he waits for the strengths to be shown, leaders to show their hand, and then he's invested.
Yeah. Because that stock there, that's probably the most extended, maybe apart from PME, of all the stocks I've looked at there. That might be the safest trade here at the moment. So, but yeah, it's crazy to sort of, that's the way the market's been rolling here, is the stuff that's been just showing that monstrous strength there just keeps sort of continuing on there. I mean, just PME, every time it's had a little pause there, it's just managed to sort of keep going, So yes, it's a kind of phenomenal market there.
There was one more request that we didn't quite cover, and which should, given the news in this week of takeovers for gold miners, we can finish with Southern Cross Gold SXG that was on the Launchpad list. So SXG, but there's a gap with a bit of news, sister news, but it's right on the 50-day moving average. So how would you trade that? Does it give you enough? What's it doing?
Yeah, I'm still suspicious of these gold names. I know that I know they've had a good run here. We've seen seen a few of them actually pop up pretty hard today. So RRL, I think Evolution popped up hard as well. So they're all looking pretty robust there. I know sometimes when you look at the last sort of highs, they had that really good run, and they all sort of set up here, and they look like they're all gonna pop on and keep going through, but they just didn't quite go there. So I think CMM, which is one of the higher ranked ones, it's just broken out there. So that looks pretty good. But yeah, look, they're all pretty robust, strong sector. We do know that they can keep going there. So yeah, the XXG is just not sort of showing the strength there so far. Has sort of come, had a fair pullback under the 50, now just back above the 50, don't know, we'd just be wanting to sort of see some better setups there. I'm just a little suspicious of gold here. Maybe I've been, bitten too many times there. So I've found gold at 50-50 when I go back and analyze my trading records there. Sort of like but the key there is, look, if you make 3 times your money, then you lose, and a 50-50 still workable, So, but yeah, it's one of those sectors there, sort of, like the time you don't take it will be the time that it takes off. I guess that's the reality there. But that's probably looks pretty good there, and CMM as well. So there are some stronger names in there, but you found here that within the gold here, it's really mixed bag. Like they're all, all the style look pretty negative. It look like a topping formation around $18 to me. So that's come off there. I think the greys are a little less, but that's obviously under takeover as well. So that'd be nice if you're along something like that. So that did look quite good there, Chris, because that sort of before the takeover, it went up to the high. So again, it went up, pretty good volume in this high here. And then it went, did the 1, 2, 3 days tight under the high. Actually, even did a couple more days there. So the whole thing just stayed nice and tight under the high there. So that's a good little setup there. So if you see that setup, it's almost like a little meaning cup and handle in there, you'd sort of say. But that's something David Ryan looks for. That's one of his favorite trades, is to sort of show strength, pull back, go to the high again, tuck under on the high there. He'll start adding around there. So not a bad setup actually, though. Yeah.
Well, they are some good setups, but as you noted, quite diverse across the gold space. And this is something we've analysed in the past about where the geographies are and different FX rates and later laws and so on. So that can filter through into the momentum traders top suite. But we got some questions and some answers from last week, people saying what they liked most, which we really appreciate. Thank you for commenting. And also, if you liked the video, then that helps promote it. The questions were, they like Gary covering the momentum leaders, covering of the themes and thematics, and sort of where they're driving. Those comments really do help us sort of concentrate where our conversation goes. So we really appreciate that. You've watched to the end, so really have your say's worth in the comments below. And to that end, we say thank you very much, our members, and thank you, Gary Glover, for another week.
Thanks, Chris.